Hi, everybody, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. City Councilman David Reddick stops by Local Matters to share his insights on what's working with the council and what's not working, what has changed and what is still the same. And he's also going to address those allegations that he colluded to take down former Councilman Saram Selassie. Because you know why? If it's local, it matters.
Dance. Let me see you move.
Love never felt so good. Dead and died, they never could. Not like you. Oh.
Hey everybody, welcome aboard. Welcome back to Local Matters. You know, every city council race can bring into the political process a new generation of volunteers, people who are willing to get out there and knock on doors and get involved in politics. And it can also bring a new focus for the council. Councilman David Reddick says that he wanted to stop by Local Matters to address accusations that he colluded to bring down a former city councilman. And he says he also wants to share his perspective of what's working with the council and what is not. So welcome aboard, City Councilman
Thank you.
Mr. David Reddick.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have you back. I mean, it's been a while now. You were here with me, I'm going to say now, has it been about 2 years?
It's been a while. I came on with David Baker when
That's
he
right.
was still the president of the NAACP.
Right.
And now Glenn Ray is the president.
Right.
And so I'm a past president.
Okay.
And I've been involved
I
in
didn't
the-
know that. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah.
Okay.
I was the youngest president in the state of Alabama at one time
Wow.
for the adult chapters.
Of the NAACP.
I wasn't younger than the youth chapters, but
Right, okay, yeah. You weren't that young.
wasn't that young. But I was the youngest adult chapter president in the state at one time. And then it passed to David Baker and it's going to Glenn Ray. It's good to have people that'll keep that organization going.
Yes.
And I believe in supporting whoever that chair is. I believe in supporting them. So.
Well, good for you. Well, you know what? You and I were talking earlier. This morning, and you shared with me that the council is really doing some things that
Right.
you have not seen in quite some time, and in fact, you say you've really never experienced that. So help us to understand what this is that the council is doing that has really got you to have you feeling that they are doing something so wonderful that you've never felt it before.
Well, for the first time I see, you know, and not in my experience with council, I grew up in this environment. I grew up with my next door neighbors or going to the councilman's house for dinner, things like that. And I've never seen this environment where the council is actually working together and you have people standing up and we're having discussions in council meetings. I haven't
Right.
seen that environment before, and it's so progressive for this city.
This particular council.
Yes, yes, I haven't seen a council work this well together before.
And that's probably going to be news to a lot of people because
Right.
many people still feel like because Ben Little has come aboard, that there's got to be some tension in there
Right.
somehow, some way.
Yeah, the opinion was that this is going to be so divisive. I remember,
Yes.
I remember a letter went out by a council member stating that if Ben Little won office, the next day City Hall was shut down. I mean, it was just, it sounded so wild, you know. And so there's this fear factor that went into this previous election. But the truth is, we've gotten more done in a shorter period of time because there's a conversation. You don't have one person asking questions and everybody else looking to one person, wondering what's going on. You know, and I was always taught, if you see an environment where you see 5 people, for instance, sitting down and only one person is speaking and all 5 people agree with everything that one person is saying, then you got one person that's running the thing and 4 people not thinking.
But what you've got really, to me, in my opinion, is a cheerleading team.
You got groupthink.
Yeah.
And the most dangerous thing to do in a city, a state, or a nation is develop groupthink. Because groupthink is when one person leads the charge and everybody else does whatever that one person says. And, you know, what's the phrase? Ultimate power corrupts ultimately. You have to put limitations. You have to put thought into it. You have to challenge the whatever the perspective is, right or wrong. It needs to be challenged because you don't know
Of
what
course.
may go wrong if there's no challenging. So you had this major, I think in the last council, you had this major groupthink scenario going on, where if you didn't get on board with our group and do whatever we said do, their ideal of us working together was do whatever this one person says do, and if you do whatever that person says do, then we're working
And you
together.
said that was in that. You said you
That was the
experienced that in the previous.
Yes, in the previous council.
Previous council. So when you mentioned not only are you guys getting along now, and you have there's an emotion that's tied to it.
Right.
But when we think, but I'm also thinking, if you could share with us. Some of the things that you guys are working on, is it sustainable?
Absolutely.
Is it economically feasible? Talk to me about some of the things that you guys are working on. Where you mentioned, yes, there may be, we may disagree,
Right.
But that's okay.
Right, you're supposed to disagree. And I'm gonna tell you, I got out of a meeting today, and we were discussing, this is what we're talking about now. We used to talk about doing what this one person said do. That was our conversations, and everybody, if they did speak to me, it was to tell me to shut up and do what this one person say do, and you know, I don't listen very well, I guess, because I was gonna say what was best for my people. But I got out of a meeting today, and the topic of discussion was a way that we can create an economic stimulus package for newcoming businesses, small businesses, where like you have some things that put people take people out of even the opportunity to start a business because of so many codes and things like that. Okay. So we were actually in a meeting today creating incentive packages for small businesses so that when they come in, you know, they don't have to pay $50,000 and $60,000 just to connect the sprinkler system in a big building. Right. And we're creating these kind of environments where we can build these buildings for small businesses so they can create new restaurants and stuff like that. So we're looking at that. We're looking at creative ways. We're looking at, I got a company out of DC right now that's looking to create a multi-use development where you have maybe a 5-6 story building, large 5-6 story building, and the top 3 or 4 floors are housing, and then the bottom levels is shopping and development and stuff like that. So you'll be able to live up here and walk downstairs to go to the grocery store, walk downstairs to go to the subway. And then not only are you walking downstairs, but you have the entire city coming to this place to shop. Okay. You know, so you have Target in your basement, basically.
So you mentioned to me too that you had been talking with State Representative Barbara Boyd on some things, also looking at some progressive policies there. Talk to me a little bit about that. What you're working with Barbara Boyd on, State Representative Barbara Boyd.
Okay, without going into all the details, me and Dr. Boyd we're actually looking at doing something right now that will really allow us to revitalize areas of specifically West Anniston. Okay. And, you know, at one time, downtown 15th Street was like this popular corridor.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And with the change of times, it became economically feasible to move away from downtown 15th Street to move to these more populated areas. Right. Well, we're looking at an incentive package now that'll make it more economically feasible to move into your downtown 15th Street. And also you have a lot of companies, you had a lot of foundries, factories, things like that. And we're not trying to bring back those. We're trying to replace those foundries and factories with like shopettes and places you can go and buy a suit or you can go and buy food or a restaurant and stuff like that, where you have these shopping plazas and stuff like that. And we're working right now on a package, and I'm gonna tell you something. Dr. Barbara Boyd is brilliant in her own right. Okay.
She's been at the game a long time.
And she's been at it a long time. Writes more legislation than anybody I know. If you can actually pull up her legislative background and see all these bills that she writes. I mean, she writes more pieces of legislature in a year than most people write in a 5-year period during their whole term. So she's actually very active. Active legislator.
And you guys actually represent the same ward.
Yes, she lives in my ward. Okay. And on the Democratic Party, we do also. Okay. I am a 32nd District executive for the Alabama Democratic Party. Right. And Dr. Boyd's representative district is the 32nd District on the state level. Okay. So I'm the Democratic representative for her state level position. All right. So I'm, you know, we're at. It opens a lot of doors for a lot of cooperation
It does, the fact that you're partnering and working with her.
and to have somebody that's been in the game and that came out of, you know, the political struggle that people like your father and my grandmother got together and fought for her to have those kind of that position and to be able to work with an icon like that and see her do
You
all
can
her
learn a lot
magic.
from her, I can imagine.
And I love it. And then there's nobody that she doesn't know. So if I need to get in touch with somebody that can do something, I can make one phone call and it's done.
And it's done.
So,
But speaking of making one phone call, we've got to go to break right now because I can hear my director screaming in my ear. We got to go to break. We got to go to break. We're going to come back and talk more because when we come back, I want to talk more about these allegations that you wanted to address, and so we're going to be tackling that when we come back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Local Matters. We're living local, never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey, and I'm joined with City Councilman David Reddick, and we've been sitting here talking for most of the morning about various things that are taking place with David Reddick and the council. Before we went to break, we were talking about your partnership that you are drawing closer and working closer with State Representative Dr. Barbara Boyd.
Right.
And that, as you mentioned, you can do nothing but learn.
Yeah.
Soak
Well,
up like a sponge and learn.
yeah, when you start talking about Barbara Boyd, I could brag on her all day. So
Right.
you lose track on that one.
Right, but I also you also wanted to stop by to address some allegations that were made that you worked to collude against former Councilman Saram Selassie. He was here on the show a few weeks ago when he talked about that, and you wanted to have an opportunity to come aboard to address those allegations. I do want to ask you, when those allegations were made and have been made now for several weeks and months, have those allegations in any way cost you a credibility in any type of way?
Well, in a way, because if what the numbers showed in this previous election, it showed that the majority of Saram's support was from the white community and the majority of Ben's support was from the black community.
Okay.
So Saram had the majority of the white voters he got from him. So they're still listening. They're still under this impression that Ben is the devil. So,
But you said we're talking about Saram's ward, though.
That's what I'm talking about, specifically his ward. His ward is now.
Because I'm like, how many whites are in his ward?
His ward is about 35 to 40% white.
Okay. And what ward is
Ward
Saram?
3.
Remind me. Okay.
And Ward 3 starts right where the country club is. The next street over.
Okay.
Is where his ward
From the
begins.
Anderson Country
It got
Club.
stretched from basically South Highland all the way to where the country club is on the other next street over.
Okay.
So it went from being 90% black to 65 to 70% black.
Okay.
So it created this kind of rift where this last election was almost half and half on voter turnout. It was about I say about 70% black and 60% black, 40% white was
Okay.
the voter turnout, and the majority of the white voters voted for Saram, the majority of the black voters voted for Ben. So it makes it look to them like I colluded, but there was really no collusion. I tried to stay out of it, honestly. And there was a meeting when he got into the runoff. Really, he thought, he was under the impression, this is what his campaign manager called me to tell me, yeah, Ben will get most of the black votes.
And who was his campaign manager?
I can't even think of his name right now.
Okay.
So he called me to tell me, yeah, Saram will get all the white supports and Ben may get majority blacks.
Okay.
But Saram will win because all the whites are going to show up and vote. I mean, that was their strategy.
So you're saying that was their strategy?
That was their strategy.
Okay.
So when it came out, it was just kind of like,
well, there's this idea, and Saram says that you were chummying up with Ben Little, and you guys are chummy, buddy, working together, going out, talking with people, passing out absentee ballots, these type of things, and he says that you were quite vocal about it, working against him.
Okay, so what happened was after he got put in the runoff, when he discovered that he wasn't going to win it outright, there was a meeting.
Okay.
And I was invited to the meeting. At the meeting, him and his campaign manager, he basically sat there like a bump on a log and turned his head, act like basically like he was getting beat up by somebody or something. And his campaign manager sat there in that meeting and threatened to beat me up, told me he ought to get up and slap me. He's talking about how he ought to get some rum
This
and
is say
jump on me.
Rom's campaign manager
Right.
did this to you.
Right, in the middle of this meeting, and there was other people at the meeting, like Erica Tosin, Brenton Tosin ran against him, and he got knocked out into the,
Right,
of the
I remember,
runoff.
I don't know Brent, but I remember the name
So
Brent
his
Tolson.
mother came to the meeting, and Kelly Sullivan was there, and a few other people, and it was just so adversarial. And then after that meeting, you know, I thought we came to an agreement, and then after that meeting, he started doing stuff like he's one of them people. He'll kind of do little things underhanded.
He who?
Saram.
Okay.
He'll do little underhanded stuff that you don't see what's going on to try to spark a reaction. Then when you react, he'll come out and say, "Oh, see how Reddick is treating me." So he
So
began
you
to
are
just
basically saying
really
he's sort of a passive. Is it passive aggressiveness,
Passive
in
aggressiveness.
his way? Is that what you are
Yes.
saying about him? Okay.
And so it became very adversarial.
That
He became
relationship between the two of you.
Right. He became very like aggressive with me all of a sudden and put me in a position, and then have his campaign manager call me talking about, you might as well support Ben, da 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 da.
Right.
So after a certain amount, after enough threats, I said, you know what, I will support Ben, because y'all not gonna keep sitting here threatening me, threatening to beat me up, threatening to attack me, threatening to do all this stuff, and me sit back and do nothing, because I have a 50% chance of being able to work with Ben and a 0% chance of being able to work with Saram. So since you guys are on me so hard to support Ben, I will. So I got involved in his
So you
campaign.
said basically you were forced. It's what you're
Right.
saying. Basically, you were forced to.
I was forced to support somebody.
To support Ben.
And so I guess they thought if they bullied me hard enough, I would jump on board with Saram, but that ain't what happened.
All right.
And so I got on board with Ben
So
100%.
you got on board with it.
I knocked on doors with him. Now, I didn't do any absentee ballot work. I didn't do that.
But when we come back, I want to address that, because there was some strong, definitely allegations that you were out passing out those ballots too. We got to go to break. We'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Local Matters. We're living local, never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey, and I'm joined with City Councilman David Reddick. And we've been sitting here talking, if you're just joining us, we've been talking about allegations made about Councilman Reddick, that he worked to collude against former City Councilman Saram Selassie. He was on Local Matters a few weeks ago, and he talked very passionately about that. He believed from the core, from his inner core, that people worked to have him, make him lose his seat at all costs.
Right.
And you were mentioning that several times. You wanted to come aboard Local Matters to address those allegations, because at one point you and Saram were like really good friends. And
We were like this.
Yeah, you guys were. So, and it really saddens me when I see relationships that go that from here to then here.
Yeah. Well, at one point, I consider him one of my best friends. We hung out 2 or 3 times a week,
Right.
you know. And, you know, that's a timeline of things that happened to get to that point.
Yeah,
you
because
know.
I'm like, how do you go from being best buds to?
Right. We
you
went
know.
from the 2012 election up until then, we probably hung out 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
And after that election, you know, he won outright, and I was in a runoff.
Right.
Him and then Mayor Von Stewart, who had just been elected too, they took a trip to Mobile for about a week.
Okay.
And he came back a different person. And so, you know,
When you say he came back a different person, when he took this trip with Von Stewart, former Mayor Von Stewart of Anniston, when he took that trip, you mentioned that they were gone for about a week. He came back, and he
came
just
back
wasn't the same.
Yeah, he came back a different person. It went from, you know, somebody who, you know, he ran his 2012 campaign off the fact that I can work with Reddick, we can be a team, da 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 da. So he went from a teammate to this. I mean, at one point I was going to allow somebody to come and pray at a council meeting, open us up in prayer.
Right.
He called me talking about, I'm telling you, you can't have this person. I said, man, you can't tell me anything.
So
And then
okay.
from there, I mean, it's a quick timeline, 2-second snap. Went from there, then our very first executive session. Executive session is a meeting that you hold that's just the council. You can't have the news reporters, you can't have any recording devices or anything else in there. Our very first executive session, he goes in, and we were talking about the school, buying the middle school. They were going to offer the middle school, that executive session was to say, we're going to offer the middle school $2 million, and there's going to be a minimum of $8 million in order to build or even retrofit an existing building so that they can house the students.
Okay.
So we would put the school in another $6 million of debt. So we were trying to bankrupt the school. And I got into it with them over that. And Saran made the statement in this executive session that if Reddick don't want to get on board, he don't need to be part of the conversation anymore. He said, y'all let me be in charge of dispersing information, and I'll make sure that Reddick doesn't know what's going on with the council until it's time to vote.
Wow.
He said, you let me be vice mayor, you let me be in charge of putting out the information, and Reddick won't know what's going on until it's time to vote on it. If he don't want to get on board with us and what we're doing, that's how it's going to be. And that's what happened. The whole council would have changed. I actually did a public a request for emails that included the whole council except for me, and they were all started by Saran. He would take a group, and if the mayor would put information out to the whole council or the city manager or Myra or someone, he would then take that and resubmit it with everybody on the same chain except for me.
But your name would be left off.
So he created this kind of dynamic where I was kind of being left out of everything that was going on,
Okay.
so this information can be hid from me, and I wouldn't know what's going on.
Did you ever
until
pull him to the side and say, "Hey, Saram, let's talk for
Oh,
a
yeah.
minute. Come on,
And I did that.
What's going on?"
About 2 years in, it got to that point, and I pulled him to the side. I said, "Man, what happened? We used to be best friends. How did we go from that to this?" You know, because the whole time I've been begging him, let's work together. I said, I'll take the blame. You can say I did anything you want to you. As long as we can work together, you can say I slapped you. You can say whatever you want as long as we can work together. So he told me then, I said, how did we go from being best friends to what we are now? He said, let me tell you something. I've never been your friend. He said, the only reason I hung out with you is because when certain people found out that I met you and I knew you and knew how to get in touch with you, they started asking me to spend time around you so that I can go back and tell them what you're doing. He said, my only job was to let them know what you were doing. And that's the only reason I spend any time around you. It's just like Leonard, I forget his last name, but he was Malcolm X's chief security officer when he got killed.
Yeah, right.
And then he's the same person that was the security for the Black Panther Party when that thing happened in
New York.
Yeah, when the Black Panther Party was formed with Newton and all those guys, he was actually there for that too. And then it came out later he was an FBI informant, black FBI informant, and his job was to bring down these organizations. Saran was doing the same thing.
So you felt like that. You were right.
No, he told me. He confessed to me that that's what he was doing.
That's what he was doing.
His job was to let them know what was going on so he can go back and so that they knew how to deal with it.
So at that point, you felt like,
yeah, why bother? You know. And then it got even further away. One thing that really got to me is in 4 years, he never stood up for his district. He never got on. He got on one local issue. A kid had got killed in Anniston, and the kid just so happened to be the brother of a professional football player. That is the only time he ever spoke up for violence in the city. Now he got on the big issues, the Brown, the Trayvon Martin issues, things like that. The national issues, he would get in front of the camera and make statements on that.
right.
But when it came to, and then when we found out we had those two officers that were members of the National League of the South,
Right.
you know, a secessionist organization brought together to try to create a division between the North and the South.
Yeah.
When we found out about that, he was quiet until I spoke to the news, and then he called me saying, what you said make a lot of sense, and I'm gonna get on board with you with that, and but I'm gonna take the lead, and it's gonna be my idea from now on, and all this stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding?
I'm sitting here now hearing so much, and this is, we are running out of time. Sometimes I wish I could do a special hour show, but we are running out of time. So just in order that, now that we're concluding this show, you're saying that you didn't work to collude with.
No, I was open.
But
collusion means that, to use the phrase collusion means that we're doing it behind your back, we're doing it in secret or something like that. I wasn't in secret. I went to where he said he lived in that neighborhood with being and knocked on the doors. We knocked on his door to give him a flyer. He wasn't there.
So you're basically saying you came out and you openly chose to work with Ben because of that.
I had no choice.
File relationship between you and
what would you do? You got a 50% chance of working with one person and a 0% chance of working with the other. What would you do?
Yeah.
And since Ben has been here, we've had more development, quicker development. And as a matter of fact, Saram, from everything I got, they actually called me and told me that they're going to make sure that Harbor Freight deal didn't come through. That Harbor deal didn't come through where we lost Buffalo Wild Wings. They called me and told me that they had just given the information to Oxford City to Oxford, and that Oxford was going to take it. and everything they said fell in the timeline. And he's actually, according to what his campaign manager told me, he's the reason that Buffalo Wild Wings didn't come, because the
saying
only
it-
person that knew that he was coming was our economic developer, our mayor, and him. They
So
were the
you're
only
saying that
people that
Ron
knew.
was behind that?
They called me and told me they just gave the information to the Oxford person, somebody in Oxford, to take so Oxford can get Buffalo Wild Wings. So you had all this going on, and what can you do? Everybody thinks that, you know, he's good at looking like a victim, like everybody's beating up on him and everything else, and it's because of how he grew up. You know.
Well, we wish we could go more, but I want to thank you for coming on.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilman Reddick, and thank you for joining us here on Local Matters, because if it's local, it does matter. Good night, everybody.